Today we are going to discuss the beautiful enactment in the Constitution of India, that is the Pitt's India Act 1784. Hi, I am Dr. Prashant Dhage, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. Today we are going to discuss this Pitt's India Act 1784. 1784. Why it is called Pitt's India Acts? William Pitts became the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, the youngest Prime Minister. Only at the age of 24, he became the Prime Minister, and he was a great administrator, and he championed the efficiency. He wanted to bring some changes in the constitution which is working for India. He was very concerned about the political structure and colonies in India, and that's why under his regime, under his tenure, he took initiative to pass this enactment that in 1784 it was passed, and that's why this act is known as Pitt's India Act of 1784. So before to start this key provision or the main part of this Pitt's India Act, we need to see the background, we need to see the historical background of this act. First of all, the company's affairs were investigated by secret committee and select committee. What does it mean by secret committee and select committee? Secret committee means this committee will secretly investigate what exactly going on in India with officials and in official proceedings and with the official. And that's why this secret committee was appointed by the British government. Second, it is select committee. This was the committee constituted by the British government and sent them directly to interact with the officials, interact with the departments, so that they will officially investigate or will rectify the problems where they are arising. Second most important thing is Anglo-Maratha War, which became one of the main cause to reform in the administration, to reform in the constitution, or to make some enactment. 1775 to 1782, 1803 to 1805 and 1817 to 1818. These three wars fought against the Maratha Empire by the British East India Company. They defeated Maratha Empire, they defeated Marathas, but financial crunch faced by the British East India Company after this war, and they were literally suffering from this financial crunch, and they were appealing to the British government to get some finance or to get a loan. Literally, company became beggars, and that's why now it has decided by the government that we need to do something more or something more enactment in this act, so that we can separate the affairs of the company, that is corporate affairs and political affairs. Because there was a crunch, there was a hodgepodge between the political and corporate practice by the British East India Company, and that's why this loophole should be removed by making some new enactment in the 1773 Regulating Act. Basically, this act, this enactment, this constitutional amendment was based on 1773 Regulating Act. 1773 Regulating Act, which was a major enactment in the constitution, but the 1773 Regulating Act came out with so many demerits, drawbacks or loopholes. Government has practiced to remove these drawbacks by 1781 Amending Act, but it was not satisfactory, and that's why it required more enactment, more reformation in this 1773 Regulating Act. That's why it was aimed to remove rest of all the demerits or drawbacks from this 1784 Pitt's India Act. Pitts, that was William Pitts, has taken initiative to remove these loopholes and to make the administrative and judicial system more efficient towards India and make such a political platform where it will establish a rest of the investment. Now in this slide, we are going to discuss the prominent part of this topic, that is the key provisions of the Pitts India Act 1784. The first provision which tells us about separate the East India Company's political and corporate activities. It clearly says that somewhere we need to separate the political affairs and corporate affairs, as the company was practicing simultaneously both these affairs where they are having a hodgepodge or crunch, and that's why it was required to separate them. Second most important, that only the company's public affairs and administration in India was subjected to increased government monitoring. That means for this process, for these proceedings, that only public affairs and administration in India will be taken care of by different bodies or different kind of institution, which was compiled by the Board of Control. And this Board of Control was comprised by the Chancellor of Exchequer, the Secretary of State, and 4 Privy Councils are among these 6 officials appointed by the King. That means this Board of Control will represent the government. It will create the influence of the government in India through this body. So we need to see the further provisions, which is very significant towards to see the constitutional enactment in the history of India, that says the Secretary of State was appointed as the Board of Control's president. That means secretary was already been introduced by the 1773 Regulating Act, and this secretary will become the chairperson of this Board of Control. He will become the president of this Board of Control. Second important is thing that the company was represented by the Court of Directors, and the British government was represented by the Board of Control. That means dual system of government was going to be formed by the Pitts India Act. Court of Directors will represent the company and the Board of Control will represent the government. So these two bodies simultaneously work in India to look after the political affairs and the corporate affairs. Most important statute which was added in this Pitts India Act, that is that the statute require all civil and military officers to declare their assets in India, and the United Kingdom within 2 months of joining. That means they declare their property after the joining before 2 months. That means this is clear that they won't be able to do any kind of corruptions in India. It will be revealed by supposed to be increasing their properties. So further in this provision, we need to also consider about the number of the members of the Governors General in Council has been decreased to 3. By the 1773 Regulating Act, when this council was formed, this council was comprised by 4 members. Now it is going to be decreased and 3 members are left. In this way, the council was as superior by the 1773 Regulating Act. Now it is going to be decreased their power, their authority, as these members in this council was minimized by 3. And then the Governor General was granted veto power. One of the most important enactment was done by this Pitts India Act, and by this veto power, Governor General became most powerful. He can use any time, at any place, his veto power in any proceedings. Next is most important, Madras and Bombay presidencies became the subservient. Before that, these 2 presidencies were separated, though it was under the British East India Company, but there were no coordination and communication among these 3 presidencies. But now It has made the protocol by this act, and Madras and Bombay presidencies became this subservient. Most important thing, that is Calcutta. Calcutta effectively became the capital of British India colonies. And right from this moment, Calcutta has started to progress, develop as a city, big city or metro city. That is the concern with this 1784 Pitt's India Act. So in these slides, we are going to discuss the authorities given to Board of Directors according to the Pitt's India Act 1784. This Board of Directors was granted complete access to the company's records. It had authority to send governors to India and to change them. As Board of Directors were possessed highest authority towards to appoint the governor or to call him back or to give directions or orders, and also they were able to authorize to check all the records or the proceeding which is concerned with the British East India Company. Second most important thing is that the Court of Directors was supposed to represent the company, and the Board of Control was supposed to represent the Crown. That means the Court of Directors will represent the company as affairs, and the Board of Control will represent the government, the Crown. But if we see, the Board of Control was more superior in compare of Court of Directors. Court of Directors were concerned with the matters of the corporate, and here the Board of Control were concerned with the government proceedings and the directions those are coming from the Parliament or the Crown. That means we can say this Board of Control was the government body and Court of Directors was the body comprised by the British East India Company to see the corporate affairs. So in this slide, we are going to discuss the most interesting enactment which also incorporated in our Constitution of India, that is the provisions for property disclosure in Pitt's India Act 1784. It says within 2 months of taking up their post, all civil and military officers of the East India Company were ordered to provide the Court of Directors with a full inventory of their property in India and in Britain. After joining in India, they have to declare their property. They have to declare all their assets which is available, which is supposed to be available in India and in Great Britain and in any other countries. So that means it was mandatory that they won't have to scope to do any kind of corruptions when they are supposed to be holding any high official post in India. Stipulated severe punishment for corrupt officials. That means those who will supposed to attempt for the corruptions, they will punish by the act, by the judicial proceedings. That means they won't get any kind of exemption as they are supposed to be a Britishers or Europeans. Now this loopholes was removed by this Pitt's India Act of 1784. So everyone will consider equal before the law. The Constitution established by Pitt's India Act remained largely unchanged until the end of the company's rule in 1858. These enactments, all these provisions which we are going to be which I have discussed, these all were sustained up to the 1858. That means after 1857, when the British government introduced themselves as the government of India, as the ruler of India, that was concerned up to this 1858. This slide will tell us about the significance of Pitt's India Act 1784. We need to see the significance, we need to see the importance, we need to see how it is executed and what was the impact of this Pitt's India Act over the Indian administration and the judicial administration. What was its judicial functions and administrative functions, we need to see through this significance. The first, which is most important, the Pitt's India Act created double control system. Double control system means Board of Control and Court of Directors. these two institutions were professed by this 1784 Pitt's India Act. But it was not decided what would be their jurisdiction. The territory of the company was called the first time in India British possession in India, as it was the objectives behind to introduce this 1784 this Pitt's India Act. It was clearly shown by this significance that these colonies in India are now going to be introduced the British possession of India. Yes, it was made for the useful in administrative and political term. But it also came out with so many defects and drawbacks when it was implemented in India. We need to discuss its defects or drawbacks. As it is given in the slides, the Governor General may easily put his two masters against each other and act on his own initiatives. That means by this 1784 Pitt's India Act, Governor General became too strong. Governor General was empowered politically, administratively and constitutionally. He can use this kind of authorities to make his own decisions. Second most important thing is that a fractious council and the Governor General's inability to veto its decision could render him ineffective, especially if his authority to use troops has been limited. It has not given clearly that where he can use his veto power, in what condition, in what place, in what context he can use this veto power. It was not clearly mentioned in this 1784 Pitt's India Act. That's why maybe this power can be excuses so many things for the Governor General. This was due to the fact that limits between the government monitoring and the company's powers were ill-defined and extremely subjective from the start. It has already been clear that the two institutions were professed by the 1784, but it was not clearly mentioned their area. It was not clearly mentioned how they will practice, how they will make the proceedings for their concerned subjects in India as corporate and political and administrative. And that's why these defects are coming out when it was implemented in India. As I mentioned you, that three most important institutions were empowered by this 1784 Pitt's India Act. These were the Board of Control, the Court of Directors and the Governor General. This was a wonderful attempt towards to make the constitutional enactment by professing this Board of Control, Court of Directors and Governor General. But it was not clearly mentioned their jurisdiction. It was not clearly mentioned their boundaries, where they have to be practiced, what would be their area and how they have to make the proceedings and to make the jurisdiction. And that's why these crises are coming out after the implementation among the Board of Control, Court of Directors and Governor Generals, and among the officials, those who are working under the Board of Control and the Court of Directors. Humanitarian appeals for better treatment of local people in British occupied territories forced the British government to act the Board of Control as accused nepotism, as they were always trying to show their consent and concern towards the Indian peoples where they have established their colonies. They are trying to assure the people that this is the good system, affordable system, useful system, where the peoples will getting happy by this new enactment, by this new constitution, by this new innovative constitutional amendment. But it was only to get the support from the Indian peoples, and that's why no enactment was produced by the British government where the Indian peoples will get happy. So now we have reached up to the conclusion. Conclusion, it doesn't mean the conclusion of the topic. Conclusion means that somewhere we need to see the defects, loopholes, and the significance and some important provision. Conclusion will tells us about how the British East India Company empowered, how the government is going to be clear or to create their political platform in India. And that's why this Pitt's India Act accordingly work for the betterment of the government of British in India. And that's why they have separated the authority between the corporate and the government. The corporate authority will undersigned by the company only, and the government authority in concern of administrative, constitutional, policy making and political will directly undersigned by the British government, the crown, the parliament. Most important thing by this act, the Calcutta effectively became the capital of the British India colonies. Calcutta came out as a metro city. Calcutta came out as one of the important city in India, and that's why Calcutta became the administrative headquarter of British East India Company. Madras and Bombay presidencies became subservient to the Bengal presidencies. Now these two presidencies directly came under the control of the Calcutta. This became the subservient. This constitution established Pitt's India Act remained largely unchanged until the end of the British rule in India in 1858. All these enactments which were carried out by the 1784, it was sustained up to the 1858, up to the new constitution, up to the new nature or new enactment. The humanitarian appeals for better treatment of local people forced the government to act. That means they are showing to be a very concern about the Indian peoples, and that's why somewhere they were trying to attempt that they are fulfilling the expectations of the Indian peoples by the 1784 Pitt's India Act. But when it came into the practice, then peoples are going to be realized that it's not for the concern of the Indian people. It is concern for to make a firm establishment of political, administrative, constitutional setup in India, and that opened the eyes of the Indians and started the movement against this British government, British East India Company. So with this new topic, we have discussed so many things with the significance, with the merits and demerits and loopholes and historical backgrounds and objectives of this act. So I hope that you will understand the entire phenomena of this enactment, and it has contributed in the development of the Constitution of India. And this is going to be over. Thank you so much.